Horror is a beloved genre among all of us in the horror fam, and most of us just view it as a personality trait at this point. It's part of our identity. It's who we are as an individual. We think about where we are right now or where we were after we'd fallen in love with the genre. Watching horror films with our family and friends. Going to the theater to see the latest offering from the horror gods. Those are all fantastic core memories cemented by nostalgia that fosters our love for the genre even more. But what about the beginning, when you were simply just an explorer of the darker side of cinema? What's up, horror fam? Steven aka Bojangles here, and come closer, my friends. I have something scary to tell you. Anna and I are going to break down the specific movies that made us fall in love with the genre. Forget the tea, we're going to spill the guts on this one. Sit back and enjoy, horror fam. Anna, this is going to be a hard one for me.
Why, Steven?
Because I literally do not remember a time in my life when I wasn't a horror fan.
I know, I love that about you.
Right? Like there's...
Yeah, you have like little child memories of being a horror fan, which is wild. I love it.
Yeah, it's actually pretty crazy. You know, like my grandparents, I was raised by my grandparents, and they were very lenient on my entertainment. I was
Yeah.
I was given free reign within reason. Mm-hmm. So they would take me to the video store, and that was kind of like my holy grail. I was allowed to pick out whatever I wanted, and
Wow.
every time I would come home with some sort of different horror movie. Each time.
Every time.
Yeah. There's something different that I would own. Like it would be like, I'd have to rent something a few times before I would commit to buying it. And sometimes even not.
Before you thought this has to be mine.
Yeah. Sometimes even not. I would just rent it over and over again in addition to like the other things that I owned. But yeah, I've always been a horror fan. It's just always been in there. And I know that's weird to a lot of people. Like a lot of people were not raised like that.
Yeah. I think some of the horror films you've told me you watched very young are surprising to me. And that's coming from a person whose family were also huge movie buffs. Yeah. And I absolutely got exposed to different types of movies a lot younger than a lot of other people. But my family leaned towards like comedies. So I grew up on like Mel Brooks, whose comedy is famously filthy.
Yeah.
So I had that. So we have that in common. There's at least some of that. Was that material? Would other families have found that appropriate? Maybe not, but it was our jam. So what's the first... If you had to reach back and say like your earliest memory of horror, what would it be? Do you know?
No, I don't. I just remember being really into slashers as a kid. And I can remember like a set of movies that I definitely owned and definitely rented over and over again. But in my world, in my life, these movies have always been a part of me.
Wow. Okay. So what set of movies do you remember like having?
So I remember, okay, here's a weird one. I remember I had these slasher films, but they were out of order.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah, that makes sense, right? As a kid, you're not really worried about what order you're seeing a movie in, right?
Yeah, not at all.
Right.
So, as a matter of fact, this would come in the later years and kind of surprise me at things. Like, for instance, Friday the 13th, the original I watched, and I was like, well, Jason's not there.
Right. It was confusing.
That was confusing to me as I got older. But,
yeah.
I had, for instance, Friday the 13th, part 4, the final chapter. For my 6th birthday, actually, I got Jason Lives, Friday the 13th, part 6.
For your 6th. birthday.
For my 6th birthday. So that tells you that my aunt who bought that for me, it was already well cemented in my legacy. This kid's a horror fan. This is what I should get him.
Yeah, it's 6 years old.
At 6 years old, I had that bad boy, man.
Yeah.
You know, I had A Nightmare on Elm Street Part 5 out of all the A Nightmare on Elm Streets. Like, that's nowhere near the top tier of the A Nightmare on Elm Street films, but I had it.
Right.
I had it. You know, for instance, I remember one time as a kid, I fell down the stairs.
Ooh.
And I didn't tumble or anything. Like I fell directly onto my butt and it knocked the wind out of me.
Oh, I remember that feeling, yeah.
Yeah, I can still remember just sitting on the stairs with that like that gasping breath. So you're just sitting there like, like, yeah. So, and my feel-good movie, because we all have our own feel-good movies that we reach for when we're sick or we're not feeling well. I just remember laying on the couch watching A Nightmare on Elm Street 5, The Dream Child.
Sure.
For that day.
Yeah.
You know, they've just always been there. For instance, I had Jaws 2, not Jaws.
Amazing. That's funny because I feel like, okay, so we had HBO when I was a kid. This is early HBO. Yeah. And I'm sure they still do if you're watching HBO on cable. But back then they would just loop movies.
Yeah.
You know, it's like every 24 hours you got the same, you know, handful of movies. And one of the ones we watched when we were little kids over and over and over again was Jaws 3.
Oh my God.
Over and over and loved that movie. So
that was like, your first experience with Jaws?
I was a fan of Jaws 3 way before I was ever a fan of the original film.
Oh my God. So how did that?
Because it was on. And so we could just put it on and, you know, we would just turn on the TV and there it was. And we would just watch it over and over. And I think it didn't hurt any that it stars Dennis Quaid, who was in so much at the time.
Yeah.
So he was recognizable and he was in these other movies that my family liked. And so there we were just watching Dennis Quaid be in a Jaws movie.
So, like, I'm just curious because Jaws 3 is a notoriously bad
Not when you're like 6.
Right, but like how did it affect you later when you finally got to watch the original Jaws? Like, how did it stack up at that point? Were you disappointed when you watched? Because
no, you know what's interesting is there was a big gap for me. I think because we were watching it on HBO and it wasn't something I owned. Yeah. Then when it fell off of HBO, it's like I remember so much of that movie because of how often we watched it. But there was probably realistically like at least a 5-6+ year gap between me seeing Jaws 3 obsessively.
Yeah.
And actually sitting down and watching the original film.
Dang.
And at that point, I was in for the like darker, scarier.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I was, you know, probably like late middle school, early high school, and was stoked on getting to watch something that was grittier and darker. And
did it come across as boring to you though after starting with Jaws 3? So you're used to it. You actually like Jaws 3.
You know, it didn't. I think I grew up watching a lot of like 70s science fiction and things like that. So Jaws is not slow compared to that stuff. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's just not like at all. So no, it never occurred to me that like compare, you know, I never even compared it to part 3.
Wow. Yeah.
You know, I just watched it. Especially like I loved even that young, I loved the dialogue in that movie so much that it just I didn't know if people think it's boring. I never knew that. Like it never occurred to me to be bored during that movie.
Yeah, I'm not necessarily saying boring. I'm saying
but
that,
you know, in comparison, because it is. Yeah, I get what you're saying. Part 3 is a little more.
Yeah, once you get to the sequels of things, it's a little more amped up.
The kill count goes way up.
Yeah. So that's kind of the thing. So. Yeah, so, you know, I just remember having that little collection of films, and I had no problem whatsoever watching the same ones over and over and over again. And when we would go to the video store, which, God, I miss those days so much. So much. It was such a magical feeling because, especially for a horror fan, right? Because you go in and the internet isn't your life yet.
Yeah.
Everybody's not connected yet. You only know what's put in front of you, really.
Right.
And your access to information is very limited, especially as a kid. So you would go into a video store and you would see the cool displays and you would see the posters.
Yeah.
And back then, I feel like movies could really trick you with cover art.
Sure.
So, especially if you're a kid.
Yeah.
You
absolutely.
know, some
or
of them,
a good trailer.
Yeah. Some of them were even really dicks about it. Would do like the lenticular covers. So they were like animated as they moved, you know, like Jack Frost would do it. And I love Jack Frost. But they would do that. And that clearly appealed to me. I was like, oh man, this is going to be awesome.
This is going to be the best thing I've ever watched.
But, you know, so I remember going to the video rental store over and over and renting, for instance, Jason Takes Manhattan.
Okay.
Which was so awesome to watch as a kid. You know, I know, you know, now that is my favorite franchise in the world. Love them all. I can sit here and say, yeah, there's some bad entries in there, but I still love them.
Right.
But, you know, Jason Takes Manhattan, especially back then when boxing was big, and watching Julius, you know, take on Jason on that rooftop. That was so cool.
Love that boxing match.
I absolutely do.
You do.
I absolutely do.
So I'm seeing a pattern here. And for the listeners who know you well.
Yeah.
Well, Jason played a huge role in your childhood and in your development as a horror fan.
Absolutely.
But I've also heard some really cute stories about little Steve and his best pal, Chucky.
Yeah. Yeah. So
Tell me more.
I was a huge fan of Chucky as well.
Yeah.
And I did own both Child's Play 1 and 2 on video. I remember watching Child's Play 2 the most. And Chucky haunted me in my dreams more than anyone else or anything else ever has when I was a child.
Wow.
Yeah. He would show up, scare the hell out of me, and then I would just go watch the films again. You know, I just loved them.
So it was like a roller coaster ride for you where the scare was fun. The thrill was fun.
Yeah, absolutely. And I don't know at what point they became comforting to me, but they're definitely my comfort movies too. And that must have started early too, because like I said, when I fell down the stairs,
that's what you wanted.
That's what I stuck in to watch was A Nightmare on Elm Street 5.
Yeah. Wow. And I think I still have not gotten to that place where a horror film is comforting to me, unless you're looking at like peripheral, like thrillers with horror elements, or, you know, I can sit down and watch Silence of the Lambs like anytime. But other than that, I haven't really hit that spot where horror is my comfort film. You know, some action. There's definitely some action films that I'll put on when I'm sick and for comfort. But, you know.
Which isn't too far off base, really.
No.
Because, like, you know, Lord of the Rings, that's one of your go-tos. And there's some big battles in that.
Absolutely. And there are movies that are closer to. They're even closer, right? Because Aliens. Yeah. The sequel to Alien is absolutely one of my comfort films. If I'm sick, I want to watch Aliens.
Absolutely.
You know, and
I can attest to this fact.
It's true. It's true.
Yeah.
But as for me, I feel like the first horror film I remember seeing, and it may not even be the first one I saw. So like I said, my family just put on movies, not really caring if they were child appropriate or not. They just threw them on. And I remember being really little and seeing American Werewolf in London.
Oh, man.
That's the one that really stands out to me in elementary school as being like, that was my real first horror film.
Yeah, that's a pretty heavy one to start with too, because it has this gritty element to it.
Oh yeah. And that transformation, I think especially, is so scary.
Yeah.
Especially for a child. But the interesting thing is right around the same time, I was a huge Michael Jackson fan, and Thriller came out.
Oh yeah.
And I was obsessed with that music video, obsessed to the point where they aired the making of Thriller on television, a documentary they had put together. And I had my parents record it for me on VHS, and I would watch that over and over and over again. Yeah. And so the director, John Landis, directed American Werewolf in London, directed Thriller.
Yeah.
Was in the documentary. You know, we got to watch Michael's transformation into a werewolf over and over and over again, and all the little, I think that might have been what helped me watch American Werewolf in London, because I watched Michael Jackson get the contacts put in, get the bladders put over his skin and then under, so that you could watch the whole transformation happen. And I just remember being fascinated and thinking that was the coolest thing. And this is how they turned Michael Jackson into a werewolf. So then I went back and watched American Werewolf in London, and it wasn't as scary. It was just so cool. I just remember thinking it was the coolest thing.
Yeah, I think I remember that documentary, oddly enough, because I had a sister who was a big Michael Jackson fan, and she had a video that it was like a compilation of all of his music videos, so you could watch them all, but it would also go behind the scenes on each one.
That's right.
So that may have been the same thing. I think
that might have been it. Absolutely.
Yeah, and she would turn that on from time to time, and
loved it. Yeah. So that, I think that gave me a huge boost. Like, I loved that those two things were happening in my world at the same time. Now, I couldn't tell you realistically like how far apart American Werewolf in London and the Thriller music video were. Yeah. But in my world, they happened at the same time.
Yeah.
And they kind of helped ease that. It's no big deal. Watching that werewolf transformation was no big deal. And so I've loved werewolf movies ever since.
Yeah.
Love them. But that's still my favorite one.
Yeah. I can definitely see why it has that nostalgic value attached to it now as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's kind of the same thing for me. It's like I said, like I know some of these movies are objectively bad, but I love them. And I can still remember going to the video store and picking up some of these movies. And I remember very specifically, I was so young still, that I hadn't associated the titles with the films just yet, specifically like the subtitles.
Okay.
Or number of sequel just yet. So I would rent Halloween 4 and 5 over and over again. And I remember I liked part 4 better.
Okay.
But I just remember in my mind thinking like, oh, there's one that ends with, Michael Myers being shot and they're on the rooftop. And that's the one I really liked.
Okay.
And part 5's the one where he gets his ass beat by Dr. Loomis with a 2x4. So I didn't like I liked them both, but part 4 was the one
that stood out
that really stood out to me, and I didn't know how to articulate that just yet.
Got it. Wow, that's funny.
Yeah.
Going back to the fact that my family was really into comedies.
Yeah.
Thinking about the movies that made me a horror fan, it really struck me how many horror comedies were really my introduction to horror. Like, I saw Mel Brooks's Young Frankenstein way before I ever saw a Frankenstein story, any other Frankenstein. Like, that was my introduction to Frankenstein.
Yeah.
Which is ridiculous.
Yeah.
But true. I thought like that's what the story was. This was Frankenstein and he dances and he's hilarious. And then what else? Oh, Love at First Bite. Which is a like 70s rom-com version of Dracula.
Yeah.
Loved it. Still love it. Showed it to you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Once Bitten, which is another vampire rom-com. Still amazing. Hell, it's held up so well. I showed it to you. So again, like now I'm a vampire fan, and it's all through comedies.
Yeah.
So all of those I saw before I ever saw like serious, darker horror films. And also I realized that because of their love of comedies, my family, especially my grandfather, was showing us comedic sequels to serious horror films. I'll give you an example. My first Evil Dead movie was Army of Darkness.
Oh man.
I had no idea.
Oh dude,
I had no idea.
You were in for a hell of a surprise.
Right? I had no idea. I had seen that movie maybe a dozen times.
Yeah.
Before I ever saw The Evil Dead.
Oh man. Yeah. Yeah, I mean that's definitely a shock. You know, it's just the same as when I saw The Evil Dead for the first time as a little kid. Mm-hmm. And also as a little kid, I saw The Evil Dead 2, and I was like, what in the hell is this? Like, I couldn't comprehend
why is this happening?
What I was seeing. Like, I thought I got a messed up copy of The Evil Dead. That's how that's
how little you were.
That's right? How little I was. I was
There's something
like,
wrong with this movie.
Yeah, like why is this like this?
I don't know why, but I can picture you like knocking the tape on something like why? There's something wrong with the tape. There's something wrong with this copy.
Something's going on. Yeah, it's funny, to be that little and watch these movies because like I said, that boxing match with Jason and Julius on the rooftop, Julius climbs up the ladder, Jason chases him up there. And Julius is kind of doing his little shadow boxing routine. He's reminding himself, left, right, left, bob and weave, all this stuff. And then they finally meet, and Jason's just standing there. He's stiff as a board. And Julius starts hitting him. And in my young mind, I'm thinking Julius has a chance. No matter how many times I watch this film over and over, I think it could end differently. Even to this day, it has stuck with me.
This is going to go differently this time.
I'm like, man, if Julius just keeps punching Jason and Jason keeps getting backed up, eventually Julius is going to knock him off the roof and Julius is going to be the victor. That never happens. I've watched that movie 1,000 times. Julius has never won.
Poor Julius.
Julius loses his head, right?
Yeah.
And it's the same thing, but in like different avenues. Like Halloween 4. I'm watching young Jamie Lloyd get bullied at school, and I don't understand it. And I know a lot of people now, like that was their childhood crush, was young Danielle Harris, because they were a kid too. I was so young that I didn't even think like that. I just remember thinking, why are they bullying her? I would be her friend.
Yeah.
If I was there, I wouldn't let them bully her. She'd be my friend.
I love that.
So it's weird to look back on these movies through the lens of a kid.
Yeah.
And the thoughts that you had while you watch them.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so I unfortunately, both fortunately and unfortunately, like I didn't start on comedies. I just went straight for the good stuff. I stuck my finger in the icing and just went for it.
Yeah.
It wasn't until later that I can really remember getting into the comedic horror, or even realizing that some of these movies have comedic elements that maybe I was a little bit too young to pick up on too.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, that's true for me. American Werewolf in London is a great example. Mm-hmm. Jack, the friend who dies first, is hysterical. And as he decays throughout the movie, it gets funnier and funnier. And no, that went right over my head.
Yeah.
When I was like, all of it. His jokes went right over my head. The fact that he was decaying further and further every time you saw him, all over my head.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, look at him. He's a scary zombie ghost looking.
Right. The humor of that went over my head. To me, it was just scary.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, this dude is tormenting his friend.
Yeah.
Speaking of, he's kind of like a Pascal character, right? Speaking of which, Pascal, and that reminds me of like the friendly ghost who does not look so friendly. Mm-hmm. I had Pet Sematary as a kid. absolutely love this movie. I think it is underrated in every way imaginable. I think Mary Lambert did an absolutely fantastic job with this. This movie is pure nightmare fuel. But one thing I remember as a kid, as you know, Stephen King got his favorite band, the Ramones, to play the title track for the film.
Amazing song.
After this horribly, horribly dark, scary movie, just flat out disturbing.
Yeah.
That song would kick on, and as a kid, I would go haywire. I was like a cat with the zoomies. That song, that's like the most heaviest music I've ever listened to at that time, and I love this movie, and it fits that movie so perfect. I would literally jump on the couch.
Like a true punk rock fan.
I would go to the arm of the couch, like off the couch, and stand beside of it so I could do like a flip over the arm of the couch onto the couch. I would get so amped up for that.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah. I just, so, I mean, it's stuff like that that just really cements that in your DNA. Like, this is part of your makeup.
Absolutely.
This is who you are.
Absolutely. What just popped into my head were two more movies that I watched over and over and over and over again as a child that are like peripheral horror.
What's that?
Teen Wolf.
Yes.
Right? I mean, right. My era, just boom.
Yeah.
And Ghostbusters.
Oh, of course.
Of course. Ghostbusters over and man, my siblings and I had that movie memorized. We loved that movie so much.
Oh, dude. And back then, the world of cinema was so fun because remember, you would go to the grocery store and you could get Ghostbusters cereal.
Oh, yeah.
You could get high C ecto coolers.
Yeah. None of these things was I allowed to eat, but yes.
But it was,
I remember
it was
seeing
awesome.
the packaging there.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And there was, of course, the Ghostbusters cartoon. There's still some videos I have in storage, I'm sure, with episodes of that recorded onto it.
Yep.
But I mean, it was just an all-encompassing thing.
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah. Being into movies in the 80s was amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What was your go-to childhood snack when you would watch these movies?
Oh, popcorn.
Oh, yeah?
Popcorn was our household movie snack.
Wow.
For sure.
Okay.
Why? What was yours?
I'm sure it was different at different times, but I have a memory of me just getting a peanut butter and jelly sandwich and just sitting down in front of the TV watching.
Oh, I love that. Yeah, we had one of those old school air poppers.
Yeah.
But every once in a while, my dad would let us do the Jiffy Pop on the stove.
Yeah.
Which was so fun.
Did it taste different? I don't know if I've ever had Jiffy Pop.
You know what's funny? I don't remember. I remember the getting to do it, right?
Yeah.
And that was the coolest thing about the Jiffy Pop.
Yeah.
Also, on Friday nights, if we went to rent movies, we got candy. We all got to pick out candy.
Oh, man.
And my two big ones were Reese's Peanut Butter Cups.
Yeah.
And Abba Zaba. And I don't even know if you're familiar with Abba Zaba, but it was a taffy, like a vanilla taffy, maybe, with peanut butter on the inside.
Oh, dang.
So clearly, I was a peanut butter girl, but.
Oh, man.
Oh, it was so good.
Yeah, that sounds delish.
Right? Those were my two when I was little. That's what I liked. And then I graduated to Snickers bars, but see, still, it's all about the peanuts.
Yeah. Yeah, so it's
candy.
It's so fun. It's so fun, like all the things that kind of come together. And, when you're a kid, you have these movies, you kind of don't, like I said, I wasn't old enough yet to know, to differentiate between the different titles, between the different franchise. They were still Chucky and Freddy and Michael. To me, they weren't necessarily Friday the 13th yet.
Yeah.
Or stuff like that. But it's interesting as you grow up. So those seeds are planted.
Right.
And you have these core memories. And then you grow up and then you get to start sharing them with people. Like, oh, no, this is my favorite movie now. And yeah, you would go to the video store and you would just get a stack of tapes, pick up a pizza on the way home. and then you're just hanging out with your friends or your family, whatever, and you're all just huddled around the television set. You're not focused on anything else except for the movie in front of you and sharing that experience with each other. It was such a magical time.
It's so true. Okay, but that brings up a great topic, which is when you were hitting like middle school, high school, and you're really, a lot of your movie watching experience starts to become about friends and watching movies with friends.
Yeah.
Were there any horror films that kind of solidified the horror fandom for you? Because it was these were movies you loved to watch with your friends. You loved to show to your friends. Like,
oh, there were so many. You know, I have a ton of memories around watching films with my friends and stuff like that.
mm-hmm.
No movies in particular. Mm-hmm. You know, there were some that I would like to share, but there was also some that, for instance,
mm-hmm.
I have a friend and he's a big time horror fan too. And we would watch a lot of movies together, and we always have.
Mm-hmm.
But I was spending the night at his house one time, and he starts telling me that Michael Jackson is in a zombie film.
Okay.
He swears to it.
Okay.
He swears that Michael Jackson is in a zombie film. And then he gets and I'm like, dude, there is absolutely no way. Like, that Michael Jackson is not in a horror film.
Okay.
And then he gets his mom to tell me this. And I'm like, dude, there's no way. It was Return of the Living Dead Part 2, if I remember correctly, that they showed me, and they were convinced that was Michael Jackson.
Oh, no.
You know, because they do like a spoof on Thriller.
Yeah.
And, you know, so that was fun. He
That's
also
funny.
showed me, he had a copy of Creepshow 2. I had never seen it. He let me borrow it, and now you know how much.
You love that movie.
I absolutely love that movie. And me and him have watched it 1,000,000 times together, and it's so good. But yeah, and yeah, in middle school, yeah, you would take, you know, tapes or videos or DVDs, whatever you had. You'd take them to school and trade them with your friends, and you know, go home, check them out, and then bring them back. Or, you know, your friends coming over to spend the night. Well, let's go rent a few movies, and you would do that and go back. But yeah, and it was interesting to see other people's point of views too. You know, like my favorite slasher is Jason. Who do you love? I love Jason too. Really? We're about to be best friends. You know what I'm saying? So
The bonding over.
Yeah, and everybody,
Jason
man.
Voorhees.
Yeah, and it was so cool because it also, like I said, with like the Return of the Living Dead Part 2 thing and Creepshow 2, like I had never seen those.
Mm-hmm.
So it was also interesting to pick up other films that you hadn't seen that other people are telling you about. And some of them were obscure, you had never heard of, like Uncle Sam. What is that?
What is that?
Right? And then you watch it. Now you're in on the joke. You know, some of the inside jokes that they would have or whatever. But yeah, that, you know, it's just a special thing that you grow up with, and you share it with other people. So that's one thing I think is great about the horror genre. It's like, we're not going to keep our lips closed, man. We watch something badass, we're immediately telling everybody we can, like, dude, you gotta check this out. It's so incredible. And that's been true my whole life. That's why this is called TALKHORROR. You know what I'm saying? Like, this is it. So yeah, that's... What about you? I mean, going to middle school, stuff like that, did you have kind of like the same vibes at your school, or?
Well, it's interesting. So when I started middle school, I switched from the public school to the Catholic school.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
Which changes the
dynamics.
A little bit. But when I was in 8th grade, or just coming into 8th grade, Bram Stoker's Dracula came out.
Oh, man.
And an uncle of mine took us to see it.
Yeah.
And if anything solidified me as a horror fan, it was that.
It.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, that's when I read the book to get ready for the movie because he kept telling us this is coming out. I'm going to take you to see it. And I prepared. I read the book. I was so ready and super into it. And I fell in love.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. It was amazing. And then I made all my friends watch it at like sleepovers and stuff.
Yeah.
I'm sure if their parents had known, we'd have gotten in some trouble. But again, my parents didn't worry about it. So they put it on. You know, they had no problem with me putting it on when my friends were over. And so, yeah, that was a huge one for me.
Yeah.
You know, and then in high school, I had friends who really started digging deeper. You know, and in high school, I had a lot of my friends were, you know, the metalheads and.
Yeah.
And so we got into the Texas Chainsaw Massacre movies. As a matter of fact, when I graduated from high school, instead of going to grad night, my friends all came over to my house and we watched a Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
Nice.
And also one of my very, very best friends, we did a Children of the Corn marathon.
Yeah, see, I've done that with the friend I was talking about earlier. We would do movie marathons like that.
Yeah.
And it was great.
Yeah. And I feel like that's really the period too, middle school and high school where, you know, I got away from my grandfather and his comedies and started hanging out with my uncles who would show us the scarier movies. And that's when I was introduced to Hellraiser. That's when I saw my first Cronenberg film.
Oh, geez.
Right? Yeah, they were. Yeah.
Yeah.
And learned my enjoyment of the darker part of the darker side of horror for sure.
Yeah. So your family didn't adhere to the parental guidelines. I mean,
No.
I know they weren't as lenient.
No.
As mine were.
Right.
But they weren't like, oh, well, you're not 13 yet. You can't watch a PG-13.
No. As a matter of fact, when the original Terminator came out.
Yeah.
So my father was really, really into film technology. Well, technology in general, but really into film technology.
Yeah.
And he came home and he put on Terminator for all of us because he was like, you've got to see this new technology. It's going to blow everyone's minds. And so I watched Terminator way too young. When he pulled the skin from his arm off, I just sat there like,
oh my God, dude.
And pulled his eyeball out. And so, oh man, I was just like, so freaked out. I mean, it wasn't the type of thing that gave me nightmares or anything like that, but I remember clearly just sitting there like, oh my God.
Yeah. Oh.
So no, they didn't really stick to those guidelines. My parents had the view that if something gave us nightmares, we couldn't watch it again. The first time was okay, but it was after. So that was kind of, okay, that didn't work out. We're not going to watch that again.
Yeah. I never had that problem. You know, if I had nightmares, I was allowed to watch whatever gave me a nightmare again. That was no problem. But I do remember my stepdad, my sister had a nightmare one time. I don't know if it was because of this movie. I don't know what, but they had, of all horror films, I don't know why, but they had Sleepaway Camp on video.
Okay.
Yeah, that's a pretty gritty one, a little more on the obscure side.
Yeah, absolutely.
Dude, he tossed that. Broke it.
We're not doing that again.
Yeah, he broke it.
Yeah.
He flat out broke that. But yeah, I never had anything taken away from me or anything like that. As a matter of fact, my grandma, whom I was raised by them once again and everything, and she was a nurse and she would work the night shift.
Okay.
And sometimes when she would come home, she would actually stop at a store and she would buy me movies. And as a matter of fact, I remember one time she gave me Night of the Demons.
Wow.
Which is a pretty hardcore horror film, and now one of my favorites.
Wow.
And I watched that with friends and I watched that with family. And luckily, they were all really cool with it. Like, I didn't have any friends or family come over that the rules were like, well, they can't watch X, Y, or Z, or they just trusted me probably when they shouldn't have, you know?
Right? I think the same goes for me. I think, no one ever thought to tell my family they're not allowed to watch this, they're not allowed to watch that. Like, that didn't happen. But I did have a nightmare that put a kibosh on certain films. My older brother showed my younger sister and I A Nightmare on Elm Street 3. So that's my introduction to that series. And the scene where he turns the young man into a marionette. Nightmare fuel, especially because I had marionettes that my grandfather had bought me from Mexico, like hanging from a lamp in my bedroom. And it was like they dangled there staring at me. It was horrible. It gave me horrible nightmares to the point I'm like crying. So James got in trouble and, and I didn't see another Nightmare on Elm Street film until high school. Cause I was probably third grade. Something like that, maybe fourth grade. So yeah, I don't think I saw the original Nightmare on Elm Street for like 10 years.
Well, to be fair, that's a really good time to watch those because I remember when I was a little kid watching my older cousin, when she was in high school, she would have her friends over for a slumber party and they would watch A Nightmare on Elm Street. And I'm just, now that I'm grown up and everything, I'm like, man, that is a great one to watch at a slumber party. That's so good.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then as you grow up and you're watching all these, you've been through school and everything and you know exactly what you like and all this stuff. And you watch new stuff with friends who, aren't here anymore. Like there's movies I've seen that I know are bad. I love them anyway. They're in the collection because I watched them with people that I've associated great memories with. So now I'll forever love and cherish those moments in those movies.
I love that.
Yeah. So, Christina's House. Nobody's probably ever heard of that movie that is listening to this podcast right now. But I remember I watched that with a friend. Unfortunately, she's passed away, but it was such a hilarious experience to watch that. So it's interesting, even when movies are some of these, horror films are, even if they're bad, you watch them with the right people. Oh, it's so good. It's so good.
So good. Now I have to ask, because it didn't come up. Your very favorite horror film is The Exorcist. Do you remember the first time you saw it?
I do. Now this one's a weird one.
Okay.
This one's going to weird you out.
Okay.
So I grew up and I'm this hardcore horror fan, right?
Right.
Hardcore, love horror.
Yeah.
This is what I'm made for. This is what I'm built for. So you get to the teenage years. I was a teenager before I saw The Exorcist.
Wow.
I was a teenager.
Okay. So I saw that movie younger than you did.
Interesting. Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I was a teenager, and we're talking like 15, 16 in there, I would say.
Okay.
So full on testosterone. I'm cocky now. I'm like, dude, look.
Nothing scares me.
Like, dude, look. I only watch real horror movies. This dated old shit, like
about a little girl, like, give me a break.
Yeah, come on, man. It was my uncle.
Little did you know.
Yeah, it was my uncle who suggested we watch this, and he worked at a hotel. Worked at an inn, a haunted inn of all places. Now that's a subject for another episode. But he worked at this inn, and I would go there. He worked the midnight shift. So I would go there, and I would take a DVD player with me or a game system when we'd play games and watch movies, whatever.
Fun.
So on this night, though, he suggested The Exorcist, and he brought a copy with him, the version you've never seen.
Wow.
So he's telling me all about it, but not too much. But he's telling me, like, this is a classic. You need to watch it and all this. And, I'm talking a little bit of smack. He turns that film on.
Mm-hmm.
And keep in mind everything I've talked about. So I'm going to lose a little bit of pride here, right? This could hit.
Let's do it.
This could hit. He turns this film on, and I'm watching it. And it starts with the Iraq scenes.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And I remember him telling me, 10 minutes in, something like this. Now these scenes, they may be a little boring for you, but it is building suspense. It's building up, and I'm like, what the hell is he talking about? I'm hooked.
I'm in it.
I'm in it. Like nice. I'm loving this. Oh my God, because you have the scene of the two dogs fighting. You have the battle between good and evil. The contrast between Father Marin and the statue of Pazuzu. Mm-hmm. You have the clock that stops ticking. Mm-hmm. You have him almost getting ran over by the carriage. You have the man who is blind in one eye, who's the steel worker or whatever. I'm hooked.
Okay.
That is in the beginning of it. I'm already hooked. And he's like, I could see where this could be, Nope. I was hooked. I was in it. That gives me chills even talking about it right now. I walked away watching after that night my favorite and the best horror film of all time. It's the greatest.
I love it.
It is the greatest film ever made. And I didn't watch it until I was in my later teens because I thought, oh, this is going to be dated. It's a hype train.
Yeah.
Right. No. There's a reason it is called the greatest horror film of all time for 50 years.
Yeah.
There's a reason it's called the scariest film of all time.
Oh, yeah.
There's a reason it is the most popular horror film of all time.
Mm-hmm.
I thought I was above that. And now I'm like...
It got you.
It had that status. It had that reputation for a reason. So, yeah, that's when I watched The Exorcist. It was much later than I should have. I can only imagine if I watched it younger. That's one of those movies that you're like, man, I wish I could go back and rewatch that for the first time again.
Oh, absolutely. The first time I saw The Exorcist, my dad had taken my brothers out for the evening. Yes, some man time. And so my mom had my sister and I. And that's when my mom decided we were going to watch. And I was maybe sixth grade, like maybe.
Yeah.
Fifth grade or sixth grade, like right
Oof.
there. And it was so scary. My sister and I slept in my mom's bed that night.
No wonder.
We're camping out with mommy.
That's a very valid reason to do it.
Yeah.
It's so good.
But the version you've never seen before, I actually got to see that in the theater when it was released in the 90s.
Oh, you're so lucky.
I was in high school and my friends and I went to go see it.
You're so lucky.
It was so fun.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was the first time anybody got to see that spider crawl.
Oh, I'm so thankful we got to watch the 50th anniversary.
Oh, it was amazing. Yeah, we just saw that in the theater last year. It was incredible.
Absolutely. I'm so thankful for that. That's one of those movies that it would eat me alive if I never saw that in theaters. And I finally did it for an official release. Yeah. And it was incredible. Incredible experience. But to answer the question, what films made us horror fans? Like I said, I can remember as a kid, I owned Child's Play 1, Child's Play 2. Mm-hmm. I owned, now we're talking if we're little kid, like these are the first ones I remember owning. Like I don't remember life not owning these.
Okay.
A Nightmare on Elm Street Part 5, The Dream Child. Mm-hmm. I remember renting Halloween 4 and 5 over and over. It would actually be far later when I would watch Halloween, surprisingly enough. And Friday the 13th 1, Friday the 13th Part 4, The Final Chapter, Jason Lives, Friday the 13th Part 6, which is my favorite of the franchise. I got that on my 6th birthday. And Jason Takes Manhattan. I did get that. And I remember having Critters really young. I can still remember getting that for Christmas one year. Mm-hmm. So Those are the movies that I just remember. They were always there. Like, I don't remember life without having those movies in it.
Yeah. Yeah, that's awesome. The two for me that I really don't remember seeing for the first time.
Oh, and Pet Sematary, excuse me. I
of
forgot,
course. Don't forget Pet Sematary.
Yeah.
The two for me that I don't remember seeing for the first time, like that's how young I was when I saw them for the first time, are American Werewolf in London and Poltergeist.
Wow. And Poltergeist went on to be your favorite.
Poltergeist has gone on to be my favorite horror film of all time. And it's interesting because, you know, you saw The Exorcist old enough to where it became your favorite horror film. It has stayed your favorite horror film. Yeah. For me, Poltergeist, like I said, was just kind of a staple. I don't remember seeing Poltergeist for the first time. We were huge Spielberg fans in my house. And I know he's just the producer, but it got shuffled right into all his other films for us at my house.
Yeah.
And so we were watching the Indiana Jones films. We were watching Close Encounters of the Third Kind and Poltergeist. And I just don't remember not knowing it. And then, you know, you kind of move on. Yeah. And there's so many other movies come out over the years. And I remember revisiting Poltergeist. I mean, even just in the last like 10, 15 years. And it definitely planted a seed for me of loving ghost stories. I love a haunted house film. Like that's probably my favorite subgenre of horror. And, you know, you've got things like The Conjuring coming out and things like Insidious coming out. And I watched all those, ate them up. Yum, 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 yum. Yeah. And then went back and watched Poltergeist. And it blew me away how much better that movie still is than anything that's come out since then in that subgenre of horror.
Oh, it's so well done.
It's so well done. And the characters are so well written and so well acted. You feel all of it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
It's a beautiful movie. It's a beautiful family drama without, without the haunting. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You could make it just a missing child movie.
Yeah.
And the portrayal by the two parents is so intense and incredible. It's beautiful.
Yeah.
So I think that's a big part of what makes that movie as good as it is.
Yeah.
So, but that's what really made me a paranormal girly for sure, was that movie.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, because, you know, other horror films, you know, I love the supernatural, paranormal subgenre of horror films as well. I think when they're well done, man, they are scary as hell. You know, you have The Evil Dead, you have Night of the Demons, you have The Conjuring. But when you look at stuff like The Conjuring, which I think is one of the scariest recent horror movies we've had.
Agreed. Absolutely. It's so scary.
Yeah. Whenever anybody asks me, I know it's becoming an old movie now.
Oh,
you know, which is kind of crazy. It is. But when people ask me for like a new horror movie that's truly scary, it's always really hard not to jump right to The Conjuring.
Yeah, even though it's how old now?
It's like 9 years old, something like that.
Knife in the heart.
Yeah. And I just find myself, you know, I constantly recommending that film.
Yeah.
Ever since I saw it in theaters.
Yeah, absolutely.
But even though it's so good, when you look at that and you look at the family in that, you do see that the family is just, oh man, we get the idea that this is a lovable family. These parents love their kids, and this is heart-wrenching for them. Like this is horrible.
Yeah, yeah.
In Poltergeist, you get a decent amount of buildup with the parents, and you know man, they love their kids. These parents are they're not
They
just
love each
there.
other.
They love each other. This is a real couple with real children, with real lives. Like it follows their relationship. It follows parenthood. It follows their work. It follows the death of the children's. It follows every damn thing.
Yeah, and it's funny because it's not like it's because they gave each character like 10 minutes of their own little story. Things are dropped in like one-liners, right? Yeah. Where the teenage daughter knows a certain motel and you get, oh, this naughty girl. Like, it's so quick. It's so subtle that you're just like, wait, what? Even her mom is like, huh? What?
Yeah, they didn't need to beat us over the head with it.
No, they're really quick moments that are windows into everyone's personality,
Absolutely. And so I'm saying they're not just a device where, oh, well, this is supposed to make you see the stakes if they lose.
Right.
Like, this is really going to suck for them. You want them to be a happy family. It's like, no, man, you see where these people like come from.
Yeah.
And then you see the decline and you want them to get back there.
Yeah. 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 There's just a lot of moments that make you really like them as people.
Yeah.
As opposed to just characters in the story. It's like, man, I really like these people. And then something horrible happens to them and it's great.
Yeah. It's so good.
Yeah.
So it's interesting that, as much as we love slashers and as you know, Friday the 13th is my favorite slasher franchise.
Mm-hmm.
Jason Voorhees is my favorite slasher.
Mm-hmm. Mine too.
A lot of what I watch and rewatch are slasher flicks. It's interesting that we have both chosen paranormal, supernatural films as our favorites.
Yeah. It's the stuff that really scares us.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And it's kind of wild too. Like, with mine being The Exorcist and me watching it later on.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I'd been watching horror films my entire life. Can't remember life without them.
Mm-hmm.
And my favorite film comes up when I'm in my later teens.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like, usually people are going to associate nostalgia with what they love the most or whatever. But no, it's The Exorcist for me.
Yeah. It was just this gem waiting for you.
It was. It was. And I think, it's also cool too. That's why I said it's kind of like a good thing and a bad thing. Like, I almost wish I had seen it younger so I could have been more scared. Mm-hmm. That would have been cool. But I'm also glad I did see it when I did, because number one, it humbled me.
Yeah.
But number two, I could appreciate it more for the film that it is, because it is, being a filmmaker, it encompasses every aspect of filmmaking, like, and takes it to a next level.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's the epitome of film.
Yeah. I think you would have gotten there regardless, because it's like, I saw The Exorcist too young to care about any of that.
Yeah.
It just scared the bejesus out of me.
Yeah.
But going back and watching it as an adult, I can really appreciate how beautifully it's filmed.
Yeah.
How incredible the dialogue is. I mean, it is so well written and so well acted. It's incredible. So I have faith in you. You would have gone back really and appreciated all of that.
It really is, because I mean, how old, look at how old we are now. Now we're adults. Mm-hmm. And we watch this film. It is my thing that I watch this film every year on Halloween. Yep. This is my 31 days of Halloween. This is number 31, baby.
Right. On Halloween, we watch this every year. That's truth.
It's the king. Truth.
Yeah.
And every time I come away discussing something new I've noticed or...
Yeah, and there are scenes that tear you up every single time you watch it.
Every time.
Every time.
And they're not even necessarily sad scenes.
No, it's just the
beauty
of the moment. Yeah.
How well it's written, either something the characters did or something. It's just how beautifully the film is made. I'm going to tear up multiple times.
Yeah.
During the watching of the film.
Yeah.
It's so beautiful.
Those are the hooks.
Right.
That it has in you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
I love that.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, I had a childhood that really fostered a love of the horror genre. This is where I'm at now, but you know, it's The Exorcist came later, man. And it's my not only my favorite horror film, my favorite film.
Yeah.
And you know, it's a genre that keeps you on your toes and has kept me entertained for my whole life in one way or another. You know, it's interesting all the things that have changed as we've grown up. And I mean, because we grew up in a crazy era.
Yeah.
We went from like the analog era to the digital era during our childhood. So, you know what I'm saying? So, you know, I mean, you know, when we were watching these films, I feel special. I do. You know, it's great. I feel like that we watched some of these films before we had the opportunity to be distracted at every single moment of our life.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. You never had to worry about phones or computers or anything while we were watching a movie, ever.
No.
Like that wasn't even a thing.
Yeah.
You know, the most, you know, I had to worry about distraction wise was talkers. I have a lot of talkers in my family. I'm a talker. If I've seen a movie a bunch of times, I'm going to talk through it.
Yeah.
And then obviously I grew up. I was a little girl. So, you know, watching those movies in middle school and high school with my girlfriends involved a lot of chatter. You know what I mean? So, but other than that, I mean, even that is, you know, when you're having a sleepover or something is part of it's part of the fun, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
So, but we were all well behaved in movie theaters. Thank you very much.
Yes.
You know what I mean? That was something everybody was really, really strict about back then. So, but it was easier too, because you didn't have a distraction in your pocket.
Yeah. You didn't have the opportunities. And I also feel like one thing that was cool about it. Now, I'm not saying, you know, well, never mind, because I know there's a lot of iPad kids out there who are handed one 2 years old.
Yeah.
I mean, we know them.
Yeah.
And so, you know, I was going to say, you know, another cool thing is, you know, when you're that young, you're not bombarded with all the information about upcoming horror movies or horror movies in general. So you would go see a cover. That's cool. Maybe the description on the back, and then you rent it or purchase it, and then you're watching it. Now there's so much information out there. You know every little detail. You know if the director's a scumbag. You know if the actor has ever been arrested. You know what this actress tweeted out, and everybody like there and. In addition to all the movie details that have now been leaked, and in addition to the opinions of literally millions of people that you don't even know, but everybody feels like their opinion is weighted in gold.
Right. Instead of that handful of professional film critics.
Yeah.
Right. Now it's everybody.
Now it's everybody.
Including us, but still,
right.
No, absolutely. And the magic of the movie trailer.
Yeah.
Right.
So that's all you had.
I feel like trailers were what really hooked me as a kid.
Yeah.
I loved movie trailers. So I didn't fast forward through them on VHSs.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, watched them.
I was watching them because I needed to know what to rent next weekend. Like, how else do you know what to rent next weekend?
Watching a movie used to be you knew what trailer was coming on next. It was kind of like listening to a CD or something. It's like, well, you know, next up is, and then next, and then and then you get used to hearing those songs in that particular order. So when you know,
yeah, that's true.
But yeah, so that's what trailers on films used to be. You know, it was part of the movie watching experience, which was fun. But yeah, so now I feel like, when some of these movies come out and stuff, it's like your opinion could be skewed.
Yeah.
By tons of different factors that used not to be there. Tons of, you know, when we were growing up.
Yeah.
You know, we didn't have as much access to literally everybody on the damn production team. And
so we just got to enjoy the movie
for what it was.
For its own merits or not. Right?
Yeah. Yeah. Another one I forgot that will probably surprise everybody. It surprised me a little bit too, but another one I had on VHS, very young.
Okay.
Warlock.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Warlock.
That's an interesting one.
Yeah. Yeah. So much. Yeah. I remember, you know, being little and the baby fat scene.
Yeah. Oh.
Just thinking, wow. Yeah. That's,
yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
Yikes.
No kidding.
That was pretty scary. But yeah, Warlock. Who would have ever thunk?
Who'd have thunk?
Right? Yeah. You'd see trailers, you know, for Warlock 2 or Warlock 3, and you'd be all amped.
Yeah.
You know, you don't know to be disappointed.
No, you have no idea. No, and that's what's great, you know, about being young and watching these movies. It's sometimes the cheesier the sequels got, the better they were to you.
Yeah.
Because, you know, they were more easily digestible for a young mind and maybe more entertaining because they, you know, the one-liners and the kill counts higher and things like that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. It didn't take them when they weren't taking themselves as seriously.
Yeah.
They were easier to, you know, more you were more easily entertained as a young person. You know what I mean? Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
You grow up and you're like, ooh.
Yeah, because I remember, now that you mentioned that, I had the original Hellraiser. Okay. As a little kid. Like, I had that on.
Yikes,
you know, I owned a physical copy of that.
Wow.
And then I remember Hellraiser 3 comes out, and I would go and rent that bad boy, and it was just balls to the wall action. And then, you know, you had a bunch of different Cenobites that they worked into this one, so you get new Cenobites, and they can, you know, one can shoot CDs. Oh, gosh. One has like a flamethrower. Stuff like that was cool to me.
One has a camera in his head.
I still do like Hellraiser 3. I do. But as a kid, that one was my favorite. It was action.
I'm sure. It's much more colorful. It's much more vibrant.
Yeah, and the mix of all the Cenobites and everything like that, like it was cool. You know, the original one was dated. It was more gritty. It was more slow.
Yeah.
You know, so it just
it's so dark.
Yeah, it just appeased my little kid mind at that time. It was rock and roll, right?
I can totally see that. Absolutely.
Yeah. Now that I'm older, I'm like, oh my God, you know, Hellraiser 1 is definitely the better film.
Yeah.
I still love Hellraiser 3 though.
I love that.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's just fun. It's fun to look back on these things, the movies that made us, as one would say. Right? You know.
Yeah. The movies that made us horror fans.
Right. And what is the horror movie that made you a fan? If you're listening on Spotify, I know you can leave a comment. On Apple Podcasts, please leave us a review and drop your answer in there. We would really appreciate it. And of course, if you're watching this on YouTube, leave a comment down below, as all the young'uns say.
And of course, you can always reach out at contact@talkhorror.com.
Absolutely. And check out those links in the bio if you want any of that information. Click on the link tree, easily accessible. Stay connected, become part of the HorrorFam, baby. We love every single one of you. And until next time, look horror,
listen horror,
Talk Horror, my friends. Mwah! We love every single one of you. Be safe. Stay scared.